For those of you who don't know Maree-Rose, instead of having a Montessori educator on tonight, we have one of the products of Montessori education. So we wanted to hear how it was from the other side. So Maree-Rose, what's your Montessori story? How did you end up in Montessori?
So my family ended up in Montessori because my parents didn't want to segregate us to traditional education only. They wanted us to have experiences beyond what was seen as quite traditional. My mum grew up with quite advanced dyslexia, and she saw how when my brother was about 3, he was showing signs of dyslexia, and she goes, I don't want him to be pigeonholed, and they were looking at alternative education. And my godmother was doing a Montessori course at the time, and she reached out to my mum when my brother was about 4 and said, hey, have you seen Riverwood Montessori, which is Southside Montessori, are doing an open day, and I think it'd be really, really good for you. And my parents' names are Peter and Zambia. I think you both should go to the open day and see how it is. And my parents fell in love, and my mum always says it was a really emotional day because it was a bit of an outlet where we knew that our kids didn't just Lexi at the time wasn't going to be segregated to being in special ed, which was very common, especially this would have been 1999, so education was still quite rigid at the time. And my mum went, this is it for us, this is the only place, this is it for us. And so my brother started in 99 going to 2000, and then I was born in 2001, and I started at Montessori in 2004. So we were
Which school?
We were both in Riverwood. So my brother did from 4 years old up until the end of stage 2. So she would have been about 11 or 12. And I was about 4 when we left Riverwood and went to what is now Sydney Montessori School. So that's where we met Liz and Hani, who were our teachers there. And I started in the second year of stage 1. My brother started first year of stage 3, and that's where we continued our Montessori journey.
So what other photos have you got? Have you got photos of the Sydney Montessori?
I have a couple photos from the Riverwood times. This is when we were a bit younger. So we have a couple photos from the classrooms during Harmony Day and Picture Day. Basically, Alexi and I were connected at the hip our whole schooling journey, but we've got a couple photos from then, and then going into a couple photos from when the high school started being developed at Sydney Montessori School. So my brother will be here in a couple minutes, but he was a part of the pioneers of the Sydney Montessori School group that actually graduated with a HSC. So my brother never went to the public school system. He went 100% Montessori from 4 years old up until 18. And that was his entire experience. And so as you can see here, their bottom right-hand photo is them quite literally during the school holidays, removing the bamboo where we were going to have the new classrooms for the high school, going into, this was would have been Christmas of 2009, Liz, or about 2007. It was around
2006.
2007
actually.
Yeah. And I remember we went throughout the summer, and we were there every day, and cutting down bamboo, and it really taught us, even though I was younger, it taught us how to take care of our environment. And that although our schooling environment really was ours, so even the younger kids, even though we were younger in the group, we weren't the ones transitioning to high school yet, we were all involved, and all the families were involved, and were exposed to creating continuous environments and being knowledgeable about our environment. So for example, in the big photo in the top right hand with Alexi and all of his best friends at the time, and they created veggie patches where we created our own produce. We had a chicken coop where we had our own products of eggs, All of our vegetables were homemade, homegrown. Nothing was fake. And we actually, the high school had its own microeconomy where we would sell the products to the primary school teachers and other people within our community. And that was something that my brother was heavily involved with, a part of the creating a microeconomy with their business studies classes for year 9 and 10, and sort of grew into their HSC as well. So a lot of our experience at Montessori was very hands-on, which was great, and we were very involved with our community,
including constructing the school. So Montessori. Liz, if you want to jump in at any time too and give your memories, feel free.
I have a lot of them.
My brother's just got in here.
Those days of cutting down the bamboo, you know, those students came in before they were even starting school. You know, it was the Christmas before, or the summer holiday before, and they just got in there, and it was just, you could see it was just the example of things to come with this particular group of students that were the pioneers. They really just got in there. Let's do this. Let's work together. That's what I love about that photo, because they did it. There were a few parents that helped too, but so we're working together as adults and students then. But
Community
even some of those photos there, you know, they built everything. So up in that top photo, the garden beds and so on, they had to work out how to do it. And the first garden beds were actually made out of bamboo. So some of those long bamboos there, they used them to build them. And then they went, as the groups grew and the cohort grew, they then developed them into, you know, timber garden beds. And so they just had to redevelop and reinvent as they went along. And then the chickens came, and then rabbits came, I think, at some point.
And Monty.
Monty the goat. Yes, we had a goat that was donated. But things grew. The hands-on, everything was integrated with their academic classes too. So, and the shop grew too. They eventually built their own shop, literally from an empty shell of a container. To an actual shop that started, and then that developed eventually later to another one that developed, which became eventually, for the higher school, for the 10 to 15 to 18-year-olds, it became A to Z Montessori, because so these guys actually started that process with our guidance. It was an experiment. It was a complete experiment when it started, to think about, what do the seniors need? Well, they're going to look at international economics. So these younger ones were looking at, you know, local microeconomy and selling to the community and running cafes and doing all sorts of things in the end. But the seniors ended up starting the whole A to Z business, which then changed. Sorry.
Welcome, Alexi.
Alexi is here.
Sorry for being late. I just ran off the pitch. It's a bit of a deja vu of the days, like running late into the classroom, just scoring last goal wins in at lunchtime. So apologies.
Do these photos bring back any memories?
Yeah, massively. I think I'm still keeping contact with most of the people there, but 100% the bamboo one, especially, because that was weeks upon weeks of just chopping down stuff. So yeah, big throwback. I actually look at these pretty often, so it's not like a shock. So it's always good to look back on it. So
yeah. So different to like government schools. Like there's a school up the road from me that is building a new building, and it's all roped off. You know, you can't get in. It's all professional construction companies that come in with you know, huge machines, and no one can get in anywhere. And, you know, you have to just look through the fences. But, you know, very different in Montessori schools, I guess, where, you know, the community is part of the construction process in whatever ways they can. So what have you both most loved about being Montessori students?
For myself, I'm not sure what's been said so far, but for myself, I think it's the ability to like develop and progress at your own kind of pace. I think so. I was dyslexic, not knowing early on, and I never really knew, to be honest. Like, because I never got held back. You know, I was advanced in some things, I was obviously, grammar, English, all that sort of side of things, I was probably behind. But I didn't really feel that because of the way the classing was I'm assuming from stage one. It would have been from stage one all the way through till I think I really understood. I had it in like probably year 8 that I'm like, oh, okay, like this is because the learning kind of changed in that high school period. I didn't figure it out. My parents knew, and like I'd done all this stuff, but me personally, I didn't really grasp it until I was a bit older. So I think I appreciate it a lot, is that, I had a learning difficulty and I didn't feel it, wasn't a big thing, still in the same classroom, still went through my year or stages, but conventional school, I would have gone through my years normally.
Yeah, you didn't feel labeled and
No,
segregated.
not at all. Yeah, so I think that out of everything, and I've noticed that more so as an adult, and when I went into university, like I knew it obviously at that stage, so I had my ways of doing that. But I'm very proud of, in university, I didn't fail a subject. I may not have done crazy, but I never failed a subject. And the way I kind of went around that was a very, in my eyes, a Montessori way. I was not good at studying, but what I was good at is facilitating a space where I'm communicating with my peers. And what we used to do, we used to have a room that was labeled room 7. Like everyone just knew, like at university, it was our room. It was just me and my friends. And that's where we would go. I'm not a teacher, but what I would do is I would get the whiteboard and all day we would study as a group. And I found I actually learnt more teaching, even though I wasn't teaching. I was just taking the information I understood, put it on there, and then gaining what everyone's input. And I was learning by facilitating, but I was actually learning at the same time. So I think that was very much in my view now as an adult, looking back. I mean, that's such a Montessori thing to do because you're working as a group. I knew individually I couldn't study individually, I'm not built that way. But group environments and the way I was taught really came up more so at university. So I think that's definitely something that I've walked away with for sure.
Oh, great. What about you, Maree-Rose? What did you most love about being a Montessori student?
I loved one thing that I really grasped towards, and now as getting in my 20s, I realized how much we were being taught from each other. And Montessori gives you the ability to learn in an environment where you're constantly growing as a group. And that didn't matter. The age differences didn't really, wasn't really felt in the community. So we were taught a lot of how to communicate with different age groups, seniors, all the way up until if we were in stage 4, we were talking to the stage 1s, and we were able to transition as a community. And I think that is a big part of a takeaway that I've taken from my Montessori education is a lot of the things that possibly would be seen tradition, because I went to traditional schooling in year 8. I went from Montessori environment to a competitive sports high school, which was selective, and then from there to a low socioeconomic high school from year 9 onwards until I graduated. So I saw the different levels of what education can look like. Sorry, I don't know what's happening with the blur. And I remember the first time I heard a school bell, I actually got really scared. And I was like, what is that? I thought it was an alarm. I thought the fire alarm was going off. I didn't realize that happens 6 times a day. And individuality and individual learning was a big thing I took away from my Montessori experience, just being able to adapt to my environment however suits me, but doesn't impact the environment as a whole. So that was one thing that I realized is quite often when you're in traditional education, there's a step process of how you learn things, and that is how it's just sort of done. And you get your homework if you don't get it, and you do it at home, which just doesn't really work, especially. And I remember reflecting when I went to high school, I went, oh my God, if Alexi was exposed to this, his conditioning to education would have been so much more difficult to find the enjoyment in it, because if you think a little bit differently, you really feel it. And but I didn't, adaptation was what I learned from my Montessori was it didn't cause a negative conditioning in me. Montessori always teaches you how to look at your environment and go, okay, but how am I going to work with it? Not how is it going to work against me? And that was a big problem. Solving is something that is so instilled in us from so early that it makes sense why Montessori teachers are more so guides and mentors, because we don't need to be told how to do something. We figure it out. And then I remember we'd go to our teacher and go, okay, this is how I think I need to do it. And this is how I'm going to do it, and just sort of watch me through it. And that was a big thing in Montessori, where they just sort of guided us, but we were doing the figuring it out. So we weren't silver spooned. And I think that was a big takeaway, especially when I went into uni. I felt the freedom again of being able to make my own timetable again and figure things out on my own again. So it definitely teaches you Montessori teaches you real world skills and adulting very young.
Yeah. Do you want to show some other photos and then we'll stop sharing?
I don't know. Alexi actually missed. I showed some of the early reward photos. Yeah, we haven't seen these ones in a long time, but I couldn't scan through with the hard drive that we have all of our Montessori photos on at the moment has decided to not be scannable. So I wish I had more, but I will try and get a proper slide to show through. But the only other photo I have is our university graduation photos, which our parents see as a big pinnacle for us both, because the reason we sort of started at Montessori is because Alexi got tested for dyslexia 3 when you were about 3, when mum and dad, and I think the response at the time was like, oh, just get him ready for a trade. He doesn't need to be school orientated. And that was sort of the mentality that was thrown at my parents, and mum went, well, I don't think that's very, that's not how we're going to go with the flow in our perspective. And so Alexi's graduation photo is a very big, important thing in our family, because a lot of people sort of had the perspective of he don't know if he's going to be able to do it, but that wasn't a perspective that was Montessori driven. We were always shooting for the stars beyond, which was what our parents sort of wanted us to have as a perspective going into adulthood. So
wow, you lucked out with those parents.
Yeah, very much so. Our parents were very involved in our Montessori community. The stuff we got our parents to do at that school was insane. We had Halloween events and medieval fundraisers and Montessori family parenting development courses that Montessori Australia still run. We were doing, I remember Montessori would always have that at least once every couple months. All the parents would get together in the high school and do a lot of these development and how to just be involved as parents.
I think they were just like, they felt like movie nights, but
yeah,
it was like that's kind of how it was labeled. But now looking back, it was more of like a, how do you bring, you can't just stop Montessori at the school. You got to do Montessori at home. You can't be, this make your own decisions, being able to do all this stuff, and then go home and you've got an artsy. Like, it just doesn't really work that way, Like, it's got to be wholesome, I guess, when it comes to that sort of.
It's a lifestyle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and in my view, I always had friends like had the stigma of like, oh, what is that? Or like, we're always different. I was just like, well, not really. It's just real world. Like, it wasn't like we're not just a whole bunch like a little cult sort of thing. Like, that's kind of like the perception from externally. It was more like, we're just taking real world stuff and applying it, not
age to life, as they say.
Yeah, exactly right.
Oh yeah. I remember, and
what did you both go ahead?
No, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask, what did you both do at university?
So I did well, the only real subject that I was really good at was business studies. Like, I think my average was like 98 or 99. Like, it was just, but everything else I was just so not to say far behind, but like it was nowhere near that. So I ended up, my ATAR wasn't amazing, obviously, because of the scaling. My HSC scores were good, but my ATAR, because of the ranking, which looking back now, I'm like, it's it's a joke. But I ended up going to, so my university thing was a bit of a thing. So I went college first because I just couldn't get, based on my ATAR score, I couldn't get in to what I wanted to do. So I did a college. I ended up smashing that, and I got into my course, which was a Bachelor in Business. Yeah, so you know what? I couldn't even tell you.
Bachelor of Commerce, major in management, isn't it?
Bachelor of Business, Commerce, and then my major was management. Could have had a sub-major in marketing, but they told me right at the end when I was about to graduate, oh, you can do one more subject and you get a sub-major. I was like, oh yeah, like how long is that going to take? An extra 6 months? I said, no, see you later. University is not for me. But you know, what I got out of Montessori is that business side thing. So like Liz said, with A to Z Montessori, like I was one of the first ones that did the on-campus store, which then evolved into the A to Z before it was A to Z. And then when I was learning business in year 10, I was physically learning the subject and then volunteering afterwards to then learn how to real world do it. So yeah, that was my university degree, which I then pretty much applied, which not many people do straight away. So I graduated when I was 21, and I went into a senior management role at probably the second busiest aquatic centre in New South Wales. So Hurst Aquatic Centre is, and I was a senior manager there at 21, running a roster of, multiple rosters. I had 3 different management roles. So I was duty manager, which was the whole site. So I was managing people 60 years old, and I was managing people 15, the trainees. And I was the go-to manager. So you've got the tier. So you've got your facility, your assistant manager, and then a duty manager, which was my role, one of my 3 management roles. And then my second one was stadium manager there. So I ran all the basketball courts, any competition, any stadium bookings, anything like that. And then before I finished at the end, I ended up being the kind of like an ops manager for the stadium and what was going to be the cricket center. So I was taking the company was Bluefit. I was taking the Bluefit way and then applying that to the cricket center. So yeah, I think I was one of the rare cases that I've gone straight into out of uni and applied directly what I've just learnt, and ended up and Maree-Rose could probably speak because she was one of my employees. But overall, looking back on it now, which I was one of the most rounded managers there in terms of being able to communicate with the different age groups, I never had felt the pushback that other people did from people that were older than me, because I respected that. And I would manage people like that very differently to the people to the 15-year-olds that are coming and learning, how to be a lifeguard. And I was, going from full operations, like I'd have to switch a switch. I'd go from the plant room, which is chemicals and this and that, straight into a real world scenario of a customer complaining about,
spa temperature.
Yeah, something so minute, and being able to manage that situation and then manage the staff that have just had maybe a half an hour, 20-minute argument. And then afterwards, then looking at the situation, doing a report, and then speaking to that staff member and just seeing how we can go about it. So yeah, so that was my kind of university thing, which then applied to real world, and which eventually got me my job now, which I'm now a senior manager again at ultra football. So in an industry that I'm obviously passionate about. So I'm now there. So yeah. So
wow, it's pretty impressive for a 21-year-old with dyslexia.
Yeah, well, it's funny to this day. So I'm turning 28 in January now, but at my new role, it was amazing, and it was, now when you look at it, like, probably not the best thing to say, but we're having a managers meeting and they were mucking around because someone made a mistake on the banking, and someone made a comment because one of my other managers knew that I was dyslexic. Made a comment, some people see letters for words, and that manager kind of looked at me like thought they were having a dig at me. And I just started laughing, and they're like, "Oh, what are you guys laughing about?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm dyslexic." And then this was a senior manager. So you're like, "Nah," like they thought I was joking. I was like, "No, I'm being serious." They go, "Oh," like they like no one's ever known. Like it's never been it's not until someone says I say that, and they're like, "Really? Like what do you see?" I'm like, depending on the page, like it'll look like a wave sometimes, depending on how many words. It's comes and goes. I only really notice it once in a blue moon now, but it's a good reminder because I get a bit comfortable sometimes. So yeah.
Maree-Rose, do you want to stop sharing if there are no other photos?
Yeah, I will. I'll do the. Okay.
Yes.
So
what did you do?
So I have just freshly graduated from my undergraduates. I just graduated about 3 weeks ago from my Bachelor of Psychology from Macquarie University. And I've just started my postgraduates in psychology to eventually get into my Masters of hopefully either neuropsychology to specialize in the adaptation of the brain, or developmental psychology. So depending on which path I get into, because it's quite a competitive field at the moment, they're the two goals for me. So I want to specialize in Montessori research. It's definitely something that I want to further do analysis of. And if the Montessori brain shows different signs or maybe statistically significant signs of development earlier, and if that is something that we can, on an international level, be able to actually expose to our communities in a lot more of the medical, scientific, everything is evidence-based in sort of environments, and see if we can actually further this as a point of reference, because the way we're taught so early is very different. We're taught sand letter papers, we're taught how to building blocks, we're taught how to create and nurture environments, cooking, even starting cooking from 3 years old. I mean, we cooked all of our meals for our entire community every day, and even little things like that were such big impacts. So I want to work involved in that sort of field. And I think having a brother that because I remember the first time I realized my brother would struggle was when he was in year 12. And he had to read Looking for Alibrandi for year 12 English. And I remember he'd come home and he came into my room and he goes, "Maree-Rose, I cannot read this book. I can't read this book. It's just not happening." So we spent every night, I would read the book to him and we would talk about the book. And then he'd go to his English class with Sandra and he would talk about this book like he'd read it back to front, because that's just what we did. And I struggled with mathematics a lot in more up until year 4, stage 4. So my brother would help me with math and I'd help him with English. And so we learned how to help each other. And I think that once we got into that rhythm, I was like, oh, other brains think differently. And that's where it got me interested in the psychology of it and how study stress works and how different learning environments work and behaviors work. So that's I think a lot of my passions for individuality and difference of thought comes from my Montessori background, for sure.
That's such a Montessori learning that people are nobody's good at everything and nobody's bad at everything, that we're all we all have strength and challenges, and that we can share those to lift all boats. So I guess are you going to be looking for Montessori graduates to bequeath their brains to you so you can dissect them?
Yeah, I've actually I've looked into a couple, because why not go for gold? You might as well don't go little. So I'm looking into possibly getting into PhD approval eventually once I finish my honors. So I've spoken to a couple. I've got a good friend who he's actually done his PhD in neuroscience, and from UTS here in Sydney, which is where I'm doing my postgraduates at the moment. And I spoke to him and I did a very Montessori thing, and I went, okay, so who do I have to speak to in the teaching environment for me to get my proposal put forward? And he goes, you can't just get someone's email. I said, well, I can, and I probably will, and I'll probably email them 45,000 times, and eventually I'll get a response, because we don't give up, because it'll happen eventually. They'll look at my research. So the goal is to knock on the door of the Montessori environment and make that impact as guess some evidence as we are. Alexi and I always do talk about, because we're very fortunate. We had cousins that joined us at Montessori, and now it has become a bit of a family continuum, as you know, because now Alexi's older, we're the older ones now, where I remember around Christmas, Alexi was talking because he got married last year, and he was explaining to my sister-in-law, like, and he turned around to me and he goes, how do you explain Montessori? I just don't know how I'm supposed to explain it. I was like, you can't explain it. He goes, see, Bianca, you just have to come for an open day. He goes, you have to see it. And I remember now that we're older, I think the reflection is following suit, and which is why a lot of it is coming back to us. So that's why we both want to be able to incentivize that Montessori mentality that we've been given. And I worked with Alexi straight. I was actually Alexi's employee. Alexi got me a job for 7 years, and we used to work together every day. And I remember there was a lot of sort of eyebrows of how siblings would work together and if we could work together. But one big thing that I think the Montessori environment instills in you is respect for positions and responsibilities within each other, and understanding how to make sure that we're being respectful of that. And from quite early on, we were both exposed to, you know, lifeguarding and resuscitation training and oxygen training and a lot of things that are, I don't think we saw as very intense, because for us, it was like we're serving our community. That wasn't something that was new to us young, because that was a responsibility we were sort of stepped into in a Montessori environment. We always took care of each other. That was a norm. So then going into it in a actual life or death training program that we were in, I think we sort of slipstreamed, and I ended up taking over the biggest traineeship group. I was a traineeship consultant in New South Wales, and I took over the biggest aquatic sites traineeship group in the country. So I was managing a group of 30 kids between the ages of 15 to 18, which comes with its own challenges around the state. And then I was also coordinating a mental health presentation program that company still uses now to this day around the country. So a lot of that mentorship that we both have given to Bluefit, our ex-company, that they still use, very often do we accredit it to a lot of our Montessori training and how we were taught to adapt to different learning levels. Because, you know, you have some people that look at a 15-year-old that's a bit quiet and isn't doing much, and they go, oh, they don't have enough personality or charisma.
Yeah, they used to annoy me so much. Like,
yeah,
they almost label people straight off the bat. You know, like even at my current job, it's like the ones that aren't performing, I'm just trying to figure out how to get the best out of them. Like, okay, they're not. What's the reason? Like, is it a personal thing at home? Have they not been trained properly? Are they nervous? Like, I think people are just very quick to like, oh, people aren't the perfect fit. You know, if a square doesn't fit in the square hole, like it just, it's no good. Whereas, you know, I'll look at a square and try and fit in a circle. Like, it's just trying to figure out a way to get the best out of people. And I as a manager now, I actually thrive on that. Like, I love the people that my peers or senior managers are like, oh, they're probably not the best. And it's happened in my current role. I've moved positions, and there were 3 young guys. Because coming from a football background, I understand their mentality. So I understand the mentality, but they were just labelled as like not good workers. And I'm like, how does this make sense? They're so driven in their football environment. How do we take that and then put that towards their working environment without hindering their football as well? So I think I get the best out of a team like that. And the guys who were casuals when I first started, now that I've been promoted to a new role, my 2IC, he's gone from people thought, he's just here for, you know, a casual job, and now he's a full-time manager. And because of that 12 months that I instilled trust in him, I didn't baby him. I didn't say, I go, all right, we're friends. Like, I got along with him. I usually get along with that character of person. But then I'm like, all right, now we got to work together. Like, if I'm putting trust in you, when I go to a manager meeting, I'm backing you up. Like, saying, you know, he's showing this is the potential. Like, I can't be getting pushback saying, oh, but this is also happening. And then we've kind of, now I've kind of created a bit of a cycle. Like I started with one young man who's just turned 21. There's another one that came on board maybe 8 months ago who was 19, and then there's another one that's 16. So now I can see it from afar. Like it's kind of like a bit of a mentorship training. Like there's a casual 16-year-old that's looking up to the 19-year-old, the 19-year-old looking up at the 21-year-old, and the 21-year-old inadvertently has confined in me as a mentor, asking, I'm like a duck. Like up front, I look like, I'm cool as, but underneath I'm just working. When he took over my role, he just looked at me and he's going like, how did you do this without, like, I was lucky I had him. But he goes like, I just don't, like, he didn't understand the amount of work. It's just a retail environment. Like his idea was like, oh, how much could there be to do? And now that it's taken on board, he comes up to me and he goes, I would have never known this much to do. I go, but this is where you've got to now trust the 19-year-old and the 16-year-old on like how I've trusted you. So give them an example, show them how it's done, let them learn. If they make a mistake, it's not life or death. I've just come from an environment where if a 15-year-old doesn't do their job, a 2-year-old's going to drown. That's the environment that I came from. And I've come to a retail environment where the worst thing that's going to happen is a faulty item. Like the amount of stress that managers had when I first rocked up, and I've gone, man, you would have no idea what it's like walking into work at 5 a.m, and then from 5:30 till you finish, it is just life or death. And that was my real world for 8 years or 7
years.
6 years I was a manager, but for 6 years straight it was, and it didn't finish at 3 or depending on the shift work. It was all night. Like if you had to be on call. If a manager had to message you saying, did you turn a pump on? Why is this, like different things? You had to be on call. So I never switched off, and I didn't realize that, because for me that was just, I didn't know any better. That was my first job out of school. I progressed through. That didn't realize until I went into this environment. I've gone, whoa, like this is how when you finish, there's no carryover. Of course, my personality, I'm always going to do that, but really once 5 o'clock hits, there's no real need to do anything. Whereas and I guess what I'm trying to get at is people's perception of a problem isn't really a problem. Like especially in that environment that I've come from, like it's just like, it was crazy to see. So I think because I've come with that mentality and the way I've managed and my style, I'm a friend, but I'm more of a leader. I'm not a boss. That like my first 2 months of the job, I was on hand, like all hands on deck. I was learning. I was making sure I could prove that I could do everything before I started delegating. And I think there was a lot of good examples of, I guess, the opposite of that. And I think inadvertently I've kind of changed the culture a little bit. I feel like the management style is more of a leadership. I wouldn't say it's like we've changed together, but I feel like inadvertently it's all kind of come to be because of that. Like I've put trust in the younger ones, and now the younger ones are starting to run the store, and we've ended up having like the best months of the company's like ever.
Wow.
Ever. Like it's been crazy. So it's just fantastic. It's been great. Yeah. So I think.
And are you thinking to yourself, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, for sending me it comes from Montessori,
sure.
A lot of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, Maree-Rose, as a psych graduate, would you say that Montessori schooling transformed you personally? Like, how much was it the school, and how much was it just your parents, right? The culture in your family that made you who you were, and how can you tell? Like, how much of it was Montessori?
I would call it 60-30-10. 60% of it was Montessori instillment of my environment, because you're at school for a long part of your life in such a pivotal period of time. And we're very fortunate where Montessori starts at a very, very early age. So we're sponges so early. And Montessori gives us this environment where it goes, here is absolutely everything that you're actually going to use for the rest of your life. You just don't know it, and they look like toys. and then it's 30% your family, in the sense where 30% of your day you're spending with your family when you're in your school years, because our school started at 8:30, really 8:45. We were there until 4. My mom had to drag us out of the school. We'd spent so much time there. Liz would know. They used to drag us out to close the gates, I swear. And then it's 10% you, and that 10% will merge to whatever that 90% is given to you. I think we're molded by our environments. We have our innate characters, absolutely, and that's where we're based from. But I think that environmental impact is so pivotal. And a lot of the exposure, I was very fortunate. I see myself as very fortunate because I had a built-in best friend and mentor with having an older brother in my constant environment. So for me, everyone that knew me at school, it was like, if you need to find Maree-Rose, if you can't find her, she's probably chasing her brother around the football pitch at lunch. That was just what, because my constant mentor was my brother. And I think that was very instilled in us because of our family dynamic as well. I mean, we grew up in a Greek household where families very instilled in us. And we grew up with responsibility quite early, and we were exposed to a lot of things very early that taught us a lot of hands-on maturity and how to be as a team. And we never used to understand siblings fighting, not in a way of like, oh, we didn't fight. Alex and I just genuinely didn't fight ever.
I think our age gap may have been
13, 18.
Yeah, so we had a 5-year age gap. So I think that's a major factor in that. Like I was always, I think up until about 18. And then I think 18 is where Maree-Rose then struggled to let go, because up until then, I think I was very much, probably 17, up until year 12, like it was always like I'm at school, so I'm always, whether I'm with the playing or whatever, you always got the second eye, like just making sure, is she all right, sort of thing. And then I think once 18 hit and I was playing football 3 to 4 nights a week, well, I was training football 3 to 4 nights a week. Then obviously, like I'd met Bianca quite young, like I met her at 17. So a lot of my time was away from home. Like my nickname at home was a myth. Like it was like a phantom. Like I'd come and I'd be gone. Not because I didn't want to be here. If anything, I wanted to be here more. Like I'm such a homebody. I love being home, Like if it wasn't for Bianca, I don't think I would have traveled. But I think that was the biggest thing. I think when I got to that 18 years and then my life just started to go a bit crazy. I had university. I was really dedicated to my footballing as a player, more so then, that I think Maree-Rose felt that I was neglecting her, but really I was just busy. You know what I mean? Like, and it was, but I tried my best to manage it, but it was just very hard.
And we adapted. I guess that was.
I think now the best period's been, I think now, in my opinion, because although we don't see each other nearly as much, I think the quality is a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
So I've heard some parents say that, they want to change their kids from Montessori to traditional school early because they say, well, Montessori is not really reality. Traditional schooling is reality, and we don't want them to be hindered, in that transition to traditional schooling.
I've never understood that. In my whole time that I've worked, I've never heard the bell. I've never heard a manager come in every 40 minutes saying, oh, we've got to move to this next task. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I've never understood that concept. Like, how is that even possible? You're going from, like, at what point is your boss going to give you a task and just look over you and tell you exactly what to do and then say, all right, that's not done, take it home and finish it? Like, that doesn't happen. They go, this is the task.
You figure it out.
You figure it out, and if it's not done, there's consequences.
Yeah.
Do
they ask you to raise your hand to go to the bathroom?
Oh, exactly right. like just little things like, I don't know. Like I've never understood that.
Yeah.
That concept.
That was a culture shock for me because I got detention. I was a great student, and I got detention my first day of normal school in year 8 because I went to the bathroom. I was like, what? Like, I came back and they were like, what high horse do you think you are to walk out of my class? And I went, sorry, I was a bit confused. And they were like, where did you go? And, oh, I went to the bathroom. I was like, I finished all my tasks. Because, Montessori, you finish your task, everything's independent learning. You finish, you go to the bathroom, you get a piece of fruit, you ask the teacher what they're doing. Like, you had your brain rest time. I finished my task. I went to the bathroom. The teacher wasn't listening to me anyway. I had my hand up for 10 minutes, didn't even look at me. And I came back to a detention slip and I went, guys, what's happening here? Like, what? And they're like, no. So you have to get a slip from me. Then you go to the office, you sign in the office, you get a piece of wood that has a key attached to it because you can't go to the normal bathrooms. You have to go to the in-class bathrooms. You have to go in, you come out, you have to determine on a piece of paper how long you're going to take. And then you come back, you sign out at the office, you give the stick back, then you take the piece of paper that the teacher originally gave to you and take it back to the teacher. I went, I'm sorry, I don't have a engineering degree already, but that sounds very complex. Probably shouldn't have said it. And I got extra detention for the rest of the week. And I was just perplexed because I didn't understand it. But, and I was the only kid that I was told I was weird because I would go at lunch to the office and say, do you guys need help? Because during lunch at Montessori, you went to the office if they needed, packages closed or A to Z materials. Like, we were just constantly in our own communities. If I was in stage 4, I'd go to stage 1 and check on the kids and we'd play in the playground or we'd play in the massive oval on the stage 3, even if everyone was involved. So then I went to a cliquey environment. And because I've been exposed to both, I was in Montessori school and I was in public. So I've got the comparison. So whenever Alexi gets the, you didn't get exposed to normal school, so you don't have the comparison. I'm like, I do. And I can tell you that the amount of personal gain I got from Montessori, and I finished at 13, which is quite young, not even comparable to I don't even remember anything I learned from traditional schooling. Not in a bad way. My teachers were amazing. They were fantastic. One thing I was very fortunate, but I didn't take away life lessons from traditional schooling. I got taught stress anxiety, study fatigue. I got taught lack of uniqueness in a classroom. I got taught how to think the way everyone else thinks because that's how you get a 95. And not in a bad way. I was just taught sort of how to box tick. And but when I look at anything to do with Montessori, that's taught me how to break a mold, and that's taught me how to think outside the box and how to think different. And when I went to uni, I didn't have a problem raising my hand to a lecturer and saying, well, I don't really think, questioning things is a pinnacle part of our adult life. It's something we're supposed to do for the rest of existence. I mean, that's the whole point of being an adult, is you have to have difference of opinions, different perspectives, so that we can grow as a society. But if everyone's box ticking and everyone is thinking just like the masses, like the teachers were taught to them, we're never going to have a continuous growth, which is something that's really scary. And one thing that I think I've found, and a big reason I came back to Montessori was when I was in the aquatic industry that I was in, and when I was doing mentorships, I used to do interviews, and I was the first point of contact for these 15-year-olds. And I remember this one kid, this was about 3 months before I contacted Montessori Australia and put my hand up to join the team. I interviewed this kid and he walked in chest up, like he shook the hand of everyone. He walked through the center, 15 years old, walked through the center, said hello to everyone. He came up to me, shook my hand, he introduced himself, and I went, this kid's got like a real adultness to him and a real respect. And he gave me his resume and I saw, I think it was Inner Sydney Montessori School. And I went, oh, he's one of ours. Like it was almost like an instant connection. And I went to this kid and I went, oh, did you go to Montessori? He goes, and you can tell this kid is constantly going, oh, it's a school. Like you can tell he does the splurt because no one knows what it is. And I went, I'm a Montessori kid too. And he just looked at me and he goes, oh, were you? Where did you go? And now this kid is getting nominated for the National Traineeship Award. He's one of the main lifeguards in the mornings. He does a 5 a.m. shift before school. He does 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. He goes to school from 9 to 3. He and then he does swim school in the afternoons, and he goes, oh, I just do it, like I'm fine. And I think work ethic is a big thing that we're exposed to. So yeah, but it's
why do you think that is, that no one knows what it is? Why do you Montessori's been in Australia, in Sydney, since like 1915 or 13? I can't
19,
remember,
I think
but
it's about 19.
13.
13.
13, yeah,
think it's 13.
Blackfriars.
Yeah.
So it's like over 100 years. Why is it that it's still such a secret, do you reckon?
I think truly, like, I think I didn't know it. I think people have the perception that it's like for people with disabilities,
Yeah.
to be honest, and it's got that stigma around it, and I'm not sure why. I think
Mm.
maybe because they're allowed. Oh, I don't know. I think if anything, I feel like that was probably the only. Well, I was lucky because I played football and I had all these extra. I never felt that, but I feel like maybe the lack of numbers is the only thing that I think may affect the individuals that go to the schools in Australia. Like, for example, you know, if you're only exposed to, you know, 4, 5, 6 people, and then you go to university where you've got, you know, you don't have that big environment, you're not used to those big environments. I think that's the only thing potentially that could affect the people coming out of Montessori. But other than that, I think that would be the only thing. Is just, and I'm not sure how to communicate it without the word of mouth. Like I try and communicate as best as I can. I'm just obviously not the best with words, but I try to just give my experiences and then how it's relating to my adult life. But I think that's the perception. The main perception, I think, is that, oh, there's only 4 or 5 kids. How are you going to learn to talk? How are you going to learn to be around people? And what I'm like, well, I'm pretty good. Like, I mean, like, it hasn't affected me. I was lucky in a sense that I had football. So, you know, I've still to this day have friends from 3 years old to people that I played football with since I was 5 years old to, you know, my adult work colleagues who have become very good friends. I think I'm a bit unique where I'm just, no matter what, I'm a bit of a chameleon. Like, I just find a way, and I think that might be the Montessori as well. I don't change who I am, but I can adapt to the environments that I'm in depending on the conversations that I need to have. You know, I'll go from having I'm not exactly the most political person, but I'll have a basic understanding. I'll go from a political conversation to just talking about the football to then, I don't know, talking about like cars with someone else, or, you know, history, war. Like, I'm very much in, like, we've got the Greek background. We've had a lot of history in our family, and, you know, I'll go from that conversation all within the same group of friends, and people are looking at me like, what the, like, especially my wife, she goes, how do you do that? Like, I don't even understand how you just went from, in one night, you have gone from maybe 10 to 15 different people and had and looked like a real conversation, well, not real conversation, but had a conversation where you're not just talking shit. Like, it was like a proper conversation, you know? I think
you're not afraid of communicating with people. So what do you reckon is the secret sauce in Montessori? Is it the 3-year classroom structure? Do you think it's like the personality of the teachers you had, or
combination of everything?
I think the only word you can use is freedom of thought, because there is no restrictions in a Montessori environment. Everything can be used in a positive way. Everything can be used for the child, by the child, created in the child's interest. And I think that is the secret sauce. You never, I think conditioning is a massive part, and something and that's where I got really intrigued when I got to uni, and I learned about positive conditioning and negative conditioning and how that works. From the day you walk into a Montessori environment, you're never treated smaller. You're equal to your teachers, you're equal to your environment, and there's power in that. There's power in being equal in your environment and being equally heard.
Equal, but having respect for the hierarchy.
Yeah.
So I think you don't think you're on the same level playing field, but you're on the same respect level. It's not like, you know, you have to call me a certain way, or you don't speak to me, or you must address me in a certain way. But I think you still have an unwritten respect of, like, you just know not to do something. You're not told not to do it, but you just know not to.
Did you call your teachers by their first name?
Yes.
yeah, nicknames sometimes. I don't know. It just depends. Just depends who the teacher was, what the relationship you had with them. You know, you don't have to get along with all of them. I think they're all great in their own way. You know, being the personality I am, I'm pretty stubborn, freedom young man. Like I definitely butted heads with some people, and then later on, I'm man enough to go back and sometimes say sorry. I did that multiple times. You know, like it's just, yeah.
I think you're taught to definitely you absorb your flaws and turn them into strengths.
I think you're pulled up way more, but not on
in things that matter.
in
with
things that matter.
substance.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah.
substance
It's not
based
just
at
getting
Montessori.
pulled up about, you know, academic things. It's you know, this probably could have been handled better, or you did this here. You know, it was more that sort of thing. I think you can gain
Yeah.
respect for teachers because you're not just being told 24/7. You also get praise, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not like just, oh, here's your mark, you did really well, but you
It's
get
the
the
effort.
constant, yeah.
And we were, definitely. And I think that was a big, and Biff touched on it a lot at the conference where he said, praise the child for the task, not them as themselves, which was a big thing. When I heard that, I went, oh yeah, like if I tried my hardest in something at Montessori and I just did not get it for a year, the one time I got it, the teacher would make it like, I knew that was an achievement. Even if it was small, I knew that was a personal win. And that's something I guess now I don't realize. I was like, oh, I do that with people.
I was just about to say I do that with coaching now. Like I've just came from the park right now. Like inadvertently, I think that's just a good man manager. Like if anything, like
that's what
like
you grew up with. That's what you know.
You're always trying to better the player, and they feel like they're getting picked on, but if anything, you're just like, I know you can do this. Like it's you can do so much more. You know, if I'm not picking on him is the wrong word, but if I'm not constantly just addressing, you know, unlucky next time, or you know, this is what you need to do. You know, it's not in a way of I'm still allowing them to make the decisions and learn from their mistakes, but I'm pushing them because of when it comes off, I'm pretty much celebrating like the goal just being scored, and it may have just been the most mundane task that just happened, but they finally got it. That 10th, 15th, 20th, 100th time they did it, they finally got it, and that was the achievement. And until that just came up, then I'm just I just do that subconsciously. I didn't even realize that's what it was. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, and
Alexi, Maree-Rose, it's been so great talking to you. I've really enjoyed it, and we could talk for hours. I really want to come back and continue it. But thanks so much for your time.
Anytime.
No problem. Sorry I was late. I really do apologize. I was racing as fast as I could get here. So
I think we're both just at that point where we know we're the seniors in the Montessori youth community at the moment. And I think a lot of what we want to, and we've always said it, like the only thing we can do now is talk about what we were exposed to. Especially we've got a lot of people around us that have new babies or 2-3-year-olds, and they're doing the school conversations, and you
never push it upon them, but you
check this out,
drip feed it, and then they're like, oh, that's interesting. And
do you think that current Montessori students know what they've got, or do you not know what you've got till you?
No, I don't think you know. No.
It's like a lightning hit.
Truthfully, I don't think I really understood it until I got to uni, and I've just looked back and I've gone, oh crap! Like this is everything I've just done, and everyone else was so far behind. You know, and I just didn't see anything as difficult. I don't know. That might be it might be bad. It might be good. I'm not sure, but I never saw anything as difficult. Like everything was just, this is it. You know, whereas everyone was like, oh, this is hard. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? I'm like, we just kind of do it.
Yeah. No complaints, only solutions. I think that's what we were raised with. It's, what are you going to complain? Complaining does nothing. You're not doing anything. How are you going to figure it out? And that grounds you. I think that's a big thing I've learned, because sometimes I'm a bit impulsive and I freak out first. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, because that's how I was conditioned. I was in a Montessori, but how are you going to figure it out, Maree-Rose? How are you going to fix this, Maree-Rose? How are you going to do it for yourself? And then that voice in the back of your head from Liz and Scott and Diane and all my teachers growing up, it turns in like a little rat wheel in your head and just conditioned.
So it's so great to hear your stories. You know, then I guess the big question is, how do we get this kind of education that you had to more children in this country? Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I personally want to create Montessori method based leadership programs for youth. If we can't, if we're going to start little pockets everywhere, we might as well start little pockets everywhere in very different environments, because then a lot of small conversations, it's like the butterfly effect. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16.
Yeah.
So for me, I want to get into the leadership mentorship and use that Montessori method in teens, and then eventually invest in and get involved in Montessori schools and create more of them, because we might be not that many of us, but we're quite mighty. I mean, there are a lot of big names that are big Montessorians. I mean, just the Wikipedia guys, the Google guys, the Amazon guy, like Taylor Swift, P. Diddy, that one always makes me laugh. You know, Anne Frank was a Montessorian, Jackie Kennedy. There are so many massive influences in our lives that are Montessorians, and I can almost guarantee, no matter what different playing field you are, if I went to Taylor Swift tomorrow and I said I'm a Montessori kid, she'd probably have a conversation, because it's just a mutual ground. So I guess we need to just do that more.
You both are inspirations, and I'm sure you will be inspirations to many others if you can do that. Thanks again for your time, and look forward to seeing you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Nice
Mark.
to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Bye, everybody. See you
Bye.
next
Bye.
time. Couple of weeks.